So in this clip, we're going to see Piers Morgan and world-renowned economist Jeffrey Sachs have an in-depth discussion on Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the war that's taking place in Iran right now. We're going to see Jeffrey Sachs say some of the most craziest comments, especially in regards to Trump, Netanyahu, dementia, talking about them both being mentally unstable. This is just a clip you're definitely going to want to see. Make sure that you watch the clip in full. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts, my perspective, and my commentary towards the end. But if you want to see the full interview, I'll leave the link in the description below. Let's get into it.
Well, my panel's coming up in a few minutes, but joining me now is the renowned economist and global affairs expert, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Professor Sachs, welcome back to Uncensored.
Piers, great to be with you. Thank you.
Where are we with this war? What is going on? I mean, as I'm about to talk to you, Hillary Clinton has posted, Trump has become fully unhinged and we should talk about it. On MS Now this morning, she added, I read these posts like the majority of Americans, both shaking my head and really just feeling sick that we have a president who is such a disgrace. And this follows another barrage of slightly bonkers posts by Donald Trump, pretending to be Jesus and attacking the Pope and so on and so on. Very familiar pattern to 6 weeks now, this kind of thing, attacking NATO, attacking all the European countries, attacking conservative podcasters, pretty well looking like he's on a rampage of, I guess, trying to find people to blame for what many people now think is turning into an enormous mess. What is your reading of it?
Well, it certainly is a disaster. It's a disaster of two people, Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. They are both mentally unstable as individuals, and they both lead ruthless governments. Both are waging war relentlessly, brutally. Donald Trump has said things in the last few days that of a shocking nature that no president in American history has ever come close to uttering. And he's now attacked Pope Leo and posted a picture of himself as Jesus Christ. In other words, the man is mentally, this is one of the few times I agree with Hillary Clinton, I guess. The man is mentally unstable. The war is a disaster. It is going to create a global crisis. It was a war, not even to say of choice, but of whim of Netanyahu and Trump. Two people got us into this. It's a measure of how completely deinstitutionalized the United States government is, that this is basically a war chosen by one person with a sycophantic Secretary of Defense, all the rest of his tiny inside team going along, but knowing that this is tragic and farcical is the word that one of the insiders used, and no role whatsoever of Congress, no evidence of even a minimal interagency consultations other than to hear the objections of the intelligence agencies and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So we're in the hands of absolute craziness.
What is fascinating, actually, as we're talking, he's now deleted, very unusually, the post of him as Jesus Christ, this image which he posted earlier. He very rarely deletes anything. What is interesting to me is I urged him to delete the post in which he was raging about ending civilization, which would have involved killing all 90 million Iranians. And I also didn't like his, and I urged him to delete the Easter Sunday message in which he was talking in the most foul-mouthed way about it all and saying praise be to Allah. None of this is helping anything from what I can look at.
Yeah, usually we have a political issue. Israel and the United States together have created a disaster in the Middle East. Israel has created a genocide. Israel and the United States together have created this war of whim in Iran that has killed thousands, but has already begun to devastate the entire world. But we also have clearly a clinical condition. We have an individual mental incapacity. The psychiatrists and psychologists that look at this call it the dark triad, meaning that the man is narcissistic, Machiavellian, in other words, completely untrustworthy in every way, and psychopathic, meaning that killing other people does not have any concern for either of these people. So these are both dark triad personalities. Many people are saying, Piers, that Trump is also showing symptoms of frontotemporal dementia as well. In other words, that this personality has always been there, but the loss of impulse control has taken over, perhaps because of dementia added to this. We have a very serious issue. There's never been a president in this incapacity. It's very dangerous, but I just want to emphasize, on top of this is a collapse of our governmental processes. There are no consultations with Congress. Congress, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist. The National Security Council, for all intents and purposes, does not exist. The intelligence agencies, for all intents and purposes, do not exist. They advised against this. So we have a one-man rule, and the one man happens to be crazy.
I mean, there will be some who listen to you, Professor Sachs, and that you listen to your damning critique of Trump and Netanyahu, calling them psychopathic and delusional, as you did in an interview at the weekend. But then you went on to say that only Vladimir Putin, Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping can stop Trump and Israel with their policies at the moment. And they'll say, well, hang on. You talk about delusional, psychopathic and wanting to kill everyone. What about Vladimir Putin? Isn't that exactly the way that he's portrayed himself in recent years?
No, I think the situation is completely different. I'm talking of a psychological assessment of Trump. One can discuss, as we have done at length, and I'm delighted that we've done so, how we got into this open conflict with Russia after all of the possibilities of peace. That is a historical process that lasted more than 30 years, starting with the U.S. cheating on the clearest possible commitment that it made about not expanding the U.S. military, much less to Russia's border. But that's a historical and political issue, and it's a major political issue. Here, I'm talking about a psychological issue. We have not seen any of those three leaders post themselves as Jesus Christ, take on the Pope, say that they're going to destroy a civilization by evening, or use the language that we can't even use, Piers, or maybe we can use. I don't know if we're allowed to say, close the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, which the President of the United States wrote on Easter morning. This is something we should understand as being different. This is something absolutely distressing, because when we also understand the account of how these decisions have been made, they have been made by one person.
Is it not true that on that point,
yes.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of debate, obviously, after what Hillary Clinton has said, and others, there's going to be a lot of debate about whether Trump is suffering some kind of cognitive issues, and that will be what it is. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
But is there, when you look at what Trump has done with Iran, I mean, I think I'm right in saying, I'm sure you'll know the answer to this, but since World War II, I don't think any American president has sought congressional approval for any military action, because they've never couched it as war. They've always couched it as a military action or whatever, which means they don't need to actually get pre-congressional approval. Is that the case?
Well, just to say, we've had a huge deterioration of our democracy since 1947, when the CIA was established under the National Security Act. So I won't argue with you there. There have been many attempts to go to Congress and to go to the United Nations for approval, sometimes disregarded in the end, sometimes Congress has voted approval, like the infamous Gulf of Tonkin resolution, in which Congress authorized the use of force in Vietnam on false pretenses. And similarly, after 9/11, there was a congressional authorization of the use of force. But we've never had a process as deinstitutionalized as the one we have right now, where we basically, even the deep state, let's put it that way, the CIA, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Armed Services Committees of Congress, they're not part of this decision making. We know actually the kind of tick-tock that of how this war took place because of an unusually clear and explicit inside account that the New York Times reported a few days ago. This was basically Netanyahu spinning a crazy story to Trump, and Trump buying it while the rest of the room was saying, "Are you kidding? This is farcical." But this man, I'm sorry, I don't know how well you know him or not, and I apologize, but I observe him. I don't know him, but he's not very smart. This man is not knowledgeable.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've known Trump 20 years. I would say he has actually pretty good gut instinct normally, which is not necessarily the normal political smarts or huge intellect, whatever those things, but that his gut instincts have actually often been quite good. What was striking about the New York Times piece was that everybody else's gut instinct was that the sequence of events that Netanyahu and the head of Mossad were laying out as what would happen if the Americans came in with the Israelis to attack Iran was the Ayatollah would go, the IRGC would start to collapse, the people would rise up, and they'd all be so distracted that no one would pay any attention to the Strait of Hormuz. And only the top bit of that happened. So, yes, they took out the supreme leader, but the rest of this did not happen. The IRGC remains firmly in charge. The people have not risen up. And the Strait of Hormuz has become an enormous economic battering ram where Iran's found out it can hold the world to ransom. And we're now in the kind of utterly perverse place where, having said that he would, blow up the whole of civilization in Iran, so 90 million people, if they didn't open the Strait of Hormuz, he is the one now launching a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
A blockade of a blockade.
Right. So you literally, yes. I mean, I just scratched my head. Just finally, Jeffrey, before we let you go, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has just seen his 16-year rule ended. Peter Magyar, once a staunch loyalist of his Tisza party, won Sunday's parliamentary election by a landslide. People are seeing it as a significant bellwether for MAGA because Orban's concept of illiberal democracy and his focus on Christian liberty and anti-immigration policies made him a hero to MAGA activists. And of course, one of the reasons Donald Trump sent J.D. Vance to try and save him at the ballot box, which was unsuccessful. I know you've praised the Hungarian government's stance on the war in Ukraine, specifically its push for peace negotiations and opposition to escalating the conflict. But is there a bigger sort of signal being sent here by what the Hungarian electorate has done? You've seen a rise of authoritarian leaders around the world since Trump won the election in 2016. Is this the beginning of the reversal of that, do you think?
I don't think so. I think what we have is people everywhere in Europe and in the United States are very unhappy. So approval ratings of our politicians are absolutely at the bottom. This is true in the UK. It's true across Europe. In just about every country, it's true for Trump. These politicians will lose at each election. This is what's going to happen right now. None of them is listening to the common sense of the public. Stay out of the damn wars. Attend to our problems, which are very real. Stop this escalation towards World War III. And Macron, Merz, Trump, Starmer, none of them is going to face an electorate successfully because they're all unpopular. And in the case of Hungary, it's quite clear. Orban was in a very long time. People are unhappy with their economic circumstances. They voted him out. So at least this is what democracy does. It gives you that moment. It doesn't give you much say in between, but it gives you that moment to vote people out. And Trump is going to face this in November. He knows it. It's the end of the Republican control of Congress. And the last 2 years of the Trump administration are going to tie this man up in knots because he's going to be impeached almost immediately, I would presume, by a Democratic majority in Congress, and because he has abused the political system and wrecked living standards in the United States. So this is going to come up for a lot of politicians. I don't think it proves anything about clarity of any trends. There is no clarity in our part of the world, as you know. Everything is confused right now.
I am certainly confused, but as always, you bring a bit of clarity to a confused world. Professor Jeffrey Sachs, thank you very much.
So before I actually go in and I want to give my perspective on what Jeffrey Sachs had to say, I want to first and foremost highlight the last bit and the last section of what it is that he said. Because the problem for me is this, and I always say this about Piers Morgan, this is someone that he's wrong more times than it is that he is right. But so many times he can be on the right side of things, but majority of the time he's on the wrong side. Look at what it is that he said about Donald Trump, saying that Donald Trump usually gets his gut instincts right. That's just complete BS. It's just absolute BS. You can take a look at Donald Trump's history and you can see the majority of the time he is actually wrong. But people like a Piers Morgan, they are Trump sycophants, they are Trump loyalists, Trump cultists, whatever you want to call it. This is what someone like Piers Morgan is. And that's the reason as to why, regardless of what Donald Trump says, regardless of what Donald Trump does, he will always have the same energy for him. And this is the problem with someone like with someone like Piers Morgan, because he cannot be very objective when he's talking about Trump because of the fact that he is a Trump loyalist. Now let's actually get into what it is that Jeffrey Sachs had to say. So there's a few things. Anybody that thinks that Donald Trump is not an unwell individual, you need to get your head checked. I'm just going to be very, very direct, very open, very honest. You have to get your head checked. This is an individual who is definitely in cognitive decline. Now, if you take a look when Joe Biden was in office, look at the way that it is that the Republicans were speaking about him and acting about him. Joe Biden never once depicted himself as Jesus Christ. He never attacked the individuals who are the reason as to why he is where it is that he was at the time. Donald Trump is an individual who's most definitely in cognitive decline, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you take a look at an individual who's 79, about to turn 80, I believe he's about to turn 80, it shouldn't be a shock horror that he is mentally going in reverse. Now, there's so many examples that we can take a look at to back up the point that Donald Trump mentally isn't what he used to be. Let's think about when he does any speech in public. This is the man who goes on long rants, he rambles, and he'll consistently lose the original point that it is that he was trying to make initially halfway through the sentence. He mixes up names and places. If you take a look back to when he confused Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, multiple times referencing wrong countries or wrong leaders. Remember when he was speaking about Greenland not so long ago, he mentioned Iceland. This is an individual who consistently does this. He slurs words, he pronounces basic terms, and he struggles to be able to do it. This is someone who is in cognitive decline, and it's not only in the way that it is that he speaks or when he's referencing people, the things that it is that he does, randomly lashing out with personal insults to people who criticize him, including his allies. Literally yesterday, one of his allies, Riley Gaines, this is an individual who, whatever Donald Trump does, she always has Donald Trump's back. What did he turn around and do? He said, I'm not even a fan. I don't even like Riley Gaines. Now, I'm glad that he done that, because this is how we get MAGA and these people to understand that, hey, this is who Donald Trump is. And when he shows you who he is, you need to believe him. But that's just an example. This is an individual who obsesses over the weirdest things, crowd sizes, ratings, and any rating that goes against him or that puts him in a negative light, he just refers to it as fake news. This is what this guy does. He goes on angry, erratic social media rants at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Honestly, the 25th Amendment needs enacting now, because this guy is causing destruction all over the world because he's mentally unstable and because Republicans don't want to take action. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this clip from Jeffrey Sachs and Piers Morgan. Once again, Piers Morgan, he really needs to wake up. He genuinely does need to wake up and understand that, listen, the shtick is up now. Like, get rid of it. It's up. Donald Trump is unwell, and all Piers Morgan is doing is hurting his own credibility by constantly sticking up and defending Donald Trump. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, hype up the video, and I'll see you guys in the next clip.